Ahoy! Today we're making a tier list. And this tier list is going to be looking at the upcoming patch, but as you can see on the side there's no A, B, C, D, because this is going to look at it from a different perspective. So I think it's impossible to rate gods by S tier to D tier with the upcoming patch. And this is going to be very important for the results that you will see here, because normally that's how I would rate them. I would just go through the current tier list and then see what we change from that. But the next patch will cause so many drastic changes to so many gods through the removal of boots and through everything that implies, as well as various relatively heavy item changes, that I think I want to do this from a different angle. So what you see on the side is we have a neutral tier, and then we have minor plus, significant plus, and massive plus, and the same with minus, which means we're talking about minor improvements in performance compared to where they are now, and likewise minor decreases in performance. So that would, for example, mean if I think that in the next patch Anubis is going to be massively better than he is right now, but I say, for example, right now I think Anubis is in A minus or whatever, then massive improvements would not mean that I'm automatically putting him in S tier, but rather that I'm putting him in that tier because I think he's going to be significantly better than A minus. So for example, maybe I would expect him to be in A plus after this, or maybe even higher, but not like God tier because of it. And that goes for everything here, right? So on the other hand, if a god is already relatively bad and I say a minor decrease in performance, it's not going to make much of a difference because that god is already bad. So it's just going to be from like what, B tier to C tier or similar. So yeah, that is something that I had to explain beforehand. I hope this is understandable to make this concept clear. So we're not talking about an absolute placement for every god here, but rather how they compare between now and the next patch based on the changes. I have on this side, that's what I'm going to look over here a little bit, a quick summary of all the changes as well. I'm going to have to tap through that a little bit because it's a lot of stuff. I don't have all of it memorized, and we're going to get into it now and see where we go. So I think we can use Achilles as a good example as well, because Achilles, I think, is someone that I would put into neutral tier. I don't think there are any significant item changes that will affect him, and I don't think there are any other changes that affect him significantly. He is in, a decent spot, I would say, and that's not going to change next patch from my expectation. He could fall off, for example, if basic attack solos just end up being valued way higher, and then he could go into minor minus or something like that. Or he could go up if he turns out to be really good with one of the items that you can access quicker now. But for now, I think he would be a neutral tier god. And we're going to look at this through this lens, basically. And with that, let's move on to the next god. So with Arachne, I don't see too many things changing that would help him. I do think that less safe mages get more of a benefit in terms of the changes this patch. I think the items for Arachne don't really change at all. I'm looking at them here, like I'm looking at the item changes, but I don't think there's anything here for Arachne specifically that would make a major difference. So I will also put him into neutral. Amusen Cup, I could see some potential for some of the item changes when it comes to the buffs to some of the hunter items or the early starter items. But at the same time, he's not a prime user of any of those. He's not a prime user of either the hunter items nor Bluestone, so I don't think much will change for him either. Apuash is someone that I would say will see a performance boost. Now, I don't think his buff was this patch. I'm just going to check. I think his buff was already before that, yeah. But he is someone who could benefit from the fact that, for example, you can get a Warlock staff very early on with less punish for it. And that is something that I think can help him. And likewise, the Vampiric Shroud buff can help him as well. So between those two changes, I would say he at least will see some minor improvements, if not significant improvements. I could imagine either of those scenarios. But yeah, I think because he already got a buff to his stats recently, he got a buff to the tank stats, and now there's further things beyond that. I see a lot of potential for him there. Then we have Amaterasu, who is also getting buffs, or she's getting direct buffs even. It's the charge rate of the 2 and the damage of the 4. So I think she will at least see minor improvements. At the same time, her problem is that she doesn't use any of the current solo starters as well as others. But if the starters shift, then I could see even more potential for her there. So I think she will at least see minor improvements through the buffs, if not significant. Einher is someone that I don't think will change. I think with the hunters in general, no, actually, no, maybe, okay, Einher, never mind. I'll place him a little bit higher. He had like fallen off slightly in between, very slightly. Still a very strong god, obviously. But I think one thing that's going to be important on Duo is that there are more objectives to contest. You have that single harpy that you can clear now. There's that Draugr that you can clear. So what that could mean is that high pressure, early clear hunters could make some work with that. And obviously he's a prime example of that. Just getting a bigger farm advantage. So that's something that I could imagine possibly happening. Anubis has some things that influence him here. I think being able to get like sustain items early on or survivability items early on and not having to worry about boots is something that helps him. I think there was another item change. Well, Vamp Shroud is something that he can look at better now because both of the upgrades got buffs, and Sacrificial Shroud is an item that, for example, he can use as well. So I see a lot of different things that help him a little bit. I don't think he'll massively shift, but I see a minor increase in performance being possible there. Ao Kuang might benefit from the fact that he could get into a ring item relatively early now. It's always a bit of a question how you want to build Ao Kuang in the first place. I think I put him slightly above neutral, but not much. I think he's just someone who could benefit like from the early ring, but not as massively as some others. Aphrodite is someone who I think will see a minor downward trend. She benefits also from like building survivability items, like being able to maybe build a Warlock Staff at the start of the game to just have some beefy base to work with or something. But first of all, that's not how she's typically built. And second of all, the anti-heal items, Tainted Steel, Tainted Amulet, Tainted Breastplate, all getting buffs is something that will most certainly cause trouble for her. So yeah, if you're providing sustain to the enemy by healing yourself, that's something she's not going to like at all. So that's going to hinder her. Even though that's obviously more of a solo thing. In middle lane, she might be more fine. But then even if she is in middle lane, somebody else might still build that item and the upgrades are still better. Now, Apollo is interesting. Obviously, also a god that was very strong for a very long time. What I think is in favor of Apollo over most other gods is that now you don't get attack speed boots. And attack speed boots were a pretty easy way to get early attack speed. We'll have to see what hunter builds come up. So maybe this won't be that relevant. But if it ends up being relevant, then he's someone who can still go like a stacking route while being able to get a decent amount of attack speed in bursts in between without having to sacrifice anything for it. And I think that could be very helpful for him. Again, something that depends a lot on how the hunter builds go, but I see some potential there. Arachne could potentially be interesting as well. It's always hard to say, and also her win rate in like non-competitive at least is pretty high. But I think all basic attack focused assassins will be at least in the minor plus, if not higher, because they benefit from not needing boots a lot, I think. Especially with Arachne, the fact also that she has built-in attack speed steroid, so she doesn't really need much in that way. She can, for example, get a very early Golden Blade if she wants to. But that's just one way to build her. Stone Cutting had to specifically be nerfed already. So I definitely see different ways in which she could be very, very potent in this upcoming meta. Not a mannequin user, in my opinion, that much compared to some others, but still also a mannequin user. Like other mannequin users, like the real mannequin users, in my opinion, are the ones that have cleaves. But Arachne is one of the few gods that can kind of work with it. The problem for her is more that the tier 2 options are both not exactly what you'd be looking at most of the time, in my opinion. But yeah, I think still a valid option for her with that buff. Provides her with even more sustain while jungling, so that's also nice. Aries. Now Aries, we're talking about PTS Staff of Myrddin, then he'd be very high. But Staff of Myrddin got a nerf on PTS or after PTS. That means that for Aries, I don't think much changes. I find it very hard to say what's going to happen to supports because the well, we got the Sentinel's gift buff, which could technically change something, but it would be a minor shift likely. And other than that, I think most support items aren't drastically changed, and it's going to be more a question of which items come into the meta. What is actually a problem for Aries is the fact that the enemy can build Winged Blade quite easily. Now that I think of it, I might actually put him down a bit. Possibly. The enemy support, if you see this in Aries, you can just decide to go Winged Blade super early, much earlier than you would have otherwise if you need boots. It'll still have with mobility, and it just counters out his one very well. But then it also only affects the support. Kind of in between here. Maybe we'll just leave him here, but yeah, it's probably a minor thing overall. But it's worth pointing out at least, I guess. Artemis got a buff, so she'll definitely get a minor plus here. But the buff, I think, wasn't that drastic. If I recall correctly, yeah, it's a damage on the cooldown on the 1, which isn't exactly her primary ability to use. And then the movement speed on the cooldown of the 2. So that is nice. That is a nice buff. But at the same time, like I said, it's going to be very hard to tell what's going to happen in the Hunter meta. And she's not exactly a goddess that is like has an easy time clearing all the camps on the map or something, because she doesn't have that much stuff for it, that much ability bursts or anything. RTO, I don't see that much potential for improvements, though I will say that's interesting that Stone of Binding is relatively early accessible now, and that allows for a very high aggression lane play when playing her as a support. So that is maybe something to look at, but that's also true for Aries. So yeah, maybe with both of them, I'm not sure if that's going to be enough, or if people are just going to decide that Gone of Thebes earlier is more important. But there's definitely some aggression potential in an early Stone of Binding for both of these that may lead to them being better. Then we have Athena, also one of those on PTS with stuff from Merlin, absolutely insane, but that got nerfed, so I don't think that much changes for her outside of that. Jungle items, she can actually, hang on, no, on second thought, we'll put her up here. I think she can use Mannequin, right? That's basic attack damage. It's not restricted to physicals. So, yeah, so she can build Mannequins in jungle. She has a cleave. And she doesn't need Bombas, honestly. And what you could do is build Mannequin Hidden Blade and then drop in a team fight and just dunk Mannequin Hidden Blade on someone. That could be pretty cool, actually. No, actually, yeah, I'll put it in minor plus. That's definitely some nice potential there. We'll see. Willish, not really anything that changed for her. I don't think she's basic attack focused enough to justify anything higher than that, because she really is more ability reliant still. Like, she's still too hybrid, and she doesn't work well with Mannequin, for example, in my opinion. I know it's been used, but I don't think it's the play compared to like late game Bombas. Yeah, I think not enough changes to justify anything higher. Who, however, will change significantly, in my opinion, is Baba Yaga. Baba Yaga gets her own set of buffs to the ultimate, which I think has a bigger shield and more knockback, and the cooldown of the 3, her escape. And again, something like an early Warlocks can help her a lot. And obviously she stacks that super quickly as well. Like, she can easily double stack now, because you don't build boots anymore. You can just build 2 stacking items, so you don't care. And you can build a Vamp Shroud to keep yourself safe by doing it. Like, I think Baba Yaga could almost be a massive plus. So definitely someone to look out for here. Bacchus, again, support, not really much changing. Could also be a decent user with Stone of Binding, but again, too hard to say without knowing more. Bakasura, also someone where I think we could see some pretty significant increase in performance. Now, the reason is Bakasura works really well with a new map. There is a single harpy on the right side of the map, not on the right side, on the solo side of the map. And this harpy can be eaten by Bakasura. So he just gets that free extra farm on a rotation if he wants to, if the solo hasn't cleared it. And that, I think, makes a hell of a difference for him, along with, obviously, the fact that he can, for example, he can even start with Golden Blade. He can literally start the game with Golden Blade if he wants to, which is very interesting. So we'll see if that is going to become meta or not. I don't know. But either way, he's definitely going to see a significant uptick in performance. I'm pretty sure about that. Then we have Baron Samedi. Baron Samedi, I would say, is in the same boat as Baba Yaga. Same things that help him, and he also got buffs to his one, to his passive, and to the cooldown of his 2. So I think overall this should push him up a lot. I don't know if he's going to be solo material, if he's going to be more of a mid laner, more of a support, but I could see him working as a mid laner. If you get Vamp Shot and just play a little bit passive early and just work from there, I could imagine that working. Bastet, actually, I think she'll be a little bit better. Because what's great for Bastet is if you can build into very high power early, if you can build Transcendence early especially, because she works very well with that. And normally, obviously, that's a problem with delaying your boots and everything. If you don't have to do that anymore, I think that is something that is very impactful for Bastet specifically. And I think she will perform better overall. How much better, I can't say, but I do think that this change helps her for sure. Bellona. Possibly could see some improvements here. Shogun's Kusari got a buff, Berserker Shield got a buff, so those items are much more usable for her. Death Toll got a buff for the cleaves for her too. So all in all, I could see Bellona seeing at least some uptick in performance. Cabrakan pretty much stays the same, I think. I don't think there's anything that really changes for him to a drastic extent. Maybe if you're playing Jungle Cabrakan, like the access to the Doom Orb or something, but I don't think it's big enough to really place him somewhere else. If anything, he got a bit of a nerf through Staff of Murden not being as effective anymore, sadly. Camazotz could see a slight nerf. This is very hard to say. This could possibly also go the other way. It could be that through some item changes he actually ends up working out better. But I'm gonna put him there because I think Camazotz with his heavy sustain could also be someone that could be countered out a little bit better by Tainted Steel now. And if that becomes the case, then he would definitely fall behind a little bit more. So I'm not gonna rule that out, so I think he might drop down a little bit. That's obviously specifically for solo. Cerberus, I don't think anything changes for him. Again, same thing as Aries, as Artio. Stone of Binding might become a thing, but it's a question mark. Canonos, I think he got a buff recently, but not in this patch. And for him in this patch, I don't think anything really changes. Not much to say there. Chuck. Now, Chuck could potentially benefit from some of the solo items. Depends a lot on how you build him, but with a typical, more ability-focused build, I don't think much really changes for him at all. No, not enough to justify anything with that placement. Changa, obviously more of a mid-mage. You don't really see her play in solo. Like Afro is the occasional solo, but Changa really just not, I think. And as such, I don't think as much changes for her. Like Tainted Steel wouldn't affect her as much as Aphrodite. She kind of, does more things than just heal. So, yeah, I think not much really changes. If I look at it from the other angle, Vamp Shroud for early survivability saves her from ganks a little bit, and she can also build into like more safe items. I wouldn't place her in the same area as like Arposh or Samdia stuff, because she is still safer than them. She technically has some sort of escape. But yeah, maybe she'll improve a little bit. Chernobyl, I don't see any specific changes that would affect him, that would make a difference. Chiron, obviously very, very strong, but I don't think he will improve significantly because none of the item changes really impact him. There are some item changes that kind of work against him maybe because some not Bluestone Hunter items get buffed, and that might nerf him in effect of that basically. But that's yet to be seen. Kronos gets at least a minor buff because he benefits from the ring changes, in my opinion, which now allow him to get into a ring earlier if you want to do that. Though Kronos doesn't necessarily build into a ring early on. Like, you can build him relatively ability focused early, so he won't see the biggest changes from it. Cthulhu. Cthulhu is someone who I think benefits from the Vamp Shroud change. Cthulhu has always been like someone who's been, or like frequently been played with Vamp Shroud, even in middle sometimes, and I think the buffs for that help him. And the upgrade could be very, very interesting for him now for sustain. He was actually one of the few where like the previous upgrade was used a little bit. So yeah, Bloodsoaked Shroud, very, very interesting change anyways. And we'll see how it works for Cthulhu. Kukulin, don't think anything really changes there. He had a bunch of nerfs prior, so yeah, I don't think anything has changed beyond that really. Cupid. Cupid might actually go up a little bit. And this is speculation, obviously, as all of this is, but Cupid might benefit from the fact that he has some built-in attack speed increase compared to some other hunters, which may allow him to build a little bit differently, build a little bit more power focus, a little bit more stacking focus maybe. Cupid is someone who likes having a lot of power as well, so who knows? I don't think we'll see it, but like technically we could see double stacking on hunters, and if that was the case, emphasis on if, then he would be like the first god to it for it, so like the Transcendent Soul Eater or something like that. Daji got a buff from the patch itself, but beyond that I don't think she sees any specific changes that benefit her a lot. I don't think she uses any of the items particularly well, so that's basically it. Danzaburo, not really anything special here that changes for him, I think. Not really up or down from what I can tell so far. Discordia, same thing. I don't think any of the changes drastically affect her. And again, Staff of Merlin was nerfed. That would have been crazy for her otherwise. That was pretty insane. So, yeah. Erlang Shen. Now I'm almost tempted to put him here. Either here or here. I think I'll just put him here. I'll take the gamble. Erlang Shen, I think, will massively benefit from the Mannequin Hidden Blade buff, from the Mannequin Scepter buff, and he uses Mannequin Hidden Blade decently enough as well. So yeah, I think that'll be very strong for him. Will have a very dominant early game. He was one of the gods who could use it before already, and now with his cleaves and everything, he'll get a lot of sustain from it as well. So I think that'll be huge. Fafnir, don't think anything changes there. I think he's just gonna be Fafnir. That's it. Fenrir, very hard to say because he's like played all over the place anyways. I don't know. I don't know if he's going to change as a support. I don't know if he's going to change as a jungler. The items could work, like some items could work in his favor, but nothing that stands out to me personally. So we'll have to see. Freya. I expect Freya, maybe not in competitive, but at least outside of competitive, to go up significantly. I think I can very much imagine, I said this yesterday, that she starts with Ring Tier 2, and that would give her an early boost in some ways. And if that becomes meta, basically, I think she could perform much better in lane. And even if not, even if she goes like a Gilded Arrow or something first, I don't know, she could still get into her rings quicker. Like everything that allows her to get into her rings quicker, to get the attack speed, to get the damage from her 2 longer, helps her a lot. Damage from 2 and 1. Ganesh, I don't see any significant changes that would affect him, as with any support here. Gap, also not. I mean, Gap could also almost be put up, because whenever there's a new confusing meta, Gap kind of is a god that people resort to, but technically, I don't think we see anything that changes for him. Gilgamesh got a nerf post-PTS, so we obviously have to factor that in, but I don't think the nerf is massive. I think it's just, cutting him down bit by bit, and that's how we're looking at this one as well. Guan Yu could potentially suffer from Tainted Steel. I'm not sure. He's not like super heal focused in lane, but then later he is, so I think at that point it might still make a difference. So I'm just gonna throw him in a minor minus here. Hachiman is getting buffs. He actually is getting a lot of buffs to his 1 that affects the number of shots and the cooldown, and then the attack speed of the 2, and something else, I think, the damage or something as well. So a lot of stuff at once, which should definitely affect him at least to some degree, but I don't know how the Hunter meta will shape up outside of that, so I'm just going to put him into minor. He might be more than that. Hades. It's hard to say that Hades is getting significant increases in performance, because in ranked especially, he's already doing quite well. But Hades is getting a buff this patch. The cooldown of his 3, and he's getting a buff to the ultimate that reduces his other cooldowns, and he's getting a buff that benefits him with just Vamp Shroud, and he benefits from the fact that he could build Warlock Staff early on. So I think Hades could be played in solo or in middle lane quite easily now. I'm gonna put him at the front of this. I would technically put him into massive increase in performance, but the thing is, in competitive, it's still a different story if he's ever gonna get played, because he already outbullies a lot of guards in lane. Not everyone anymore, but he still gets decent enough pressure in lane. He just doesn't bring the potential in late game, I think, for competitive. And outside of competitive, he can't actually go much higher. So ironically, he's already, he's technically already very high up in a traditional tier list when it comes to just statistical performance. So I'm just gonna put in at the front significant increases instead of massive. Habwa, I think, could also see pretty solid increase in his performance. So Habwa is getting a buff to the damage of his 1, which is always scary. And then along with that, same items that I mentioned for Hades also benefit him. And you could also see some potential for him as a jungler with the access to Doom Orb being quicker and then getting your movement speed naturally, which means his weakest phase, where it's early, where you normally just can get camped, is shortened a little bit at least. Heimdall, don't really see anything that would affect him particularly. Hell is getting buffs. Now, it's the scaling of a 1 and the mana cost, I think, or something like that. But at the same time, kind of have to look at it from the Aphrodite angle as well, because I would definitely build Tainted Steel if the enemy picks a Hell. So I don't know. I'm gonna put her up a bit, because Hell can often break through in metas like this. And there are a lot of items that can help her a little bit to get through the early, so I would justify it with that. But I wouldn't be surprised if in the end she actually doesn't change much either, because, again, Tainted Steel. Hera gets a buff and generally works also pretty well with the survivability stuff that's coming her way. The buff, I think, wasn't that massive, though. It's the Argus damage and the damage of the 1. No, it's not bad, actually. I mean, compared to now, we might actually see significant increases in performance, because right now I'm really not seeing much Hera. I think she's up wash area. She's here-ish. Not all the way up, but still doing a little bit better. Hercules, I mean, yeah, Tainted Steel affects him, but I think he will mostly be unaffected overall. Because he still has his lane presence, still doing pretty well at the moment. And that's not necessarily going to change. Horus, I also don't see anything that significantly affects him. I'm missing something. Hu Yi, same thing here. New map, actually, maybe with the new objectives, it might be interesting if he can benefit a lot from bouncing on those and clearing them quicker, which might bring him up a little bit, but that's too hard to say. That depends a lot on how the bounces are laid out. I haven't looked at that on PTS. If I did, then I could tell you more, but yeah, just speculating here, really, if there's any potential for him to improve. Hunbatz, I mean, he has access to cooldown reduction earlier, which is really nice for him, but then Hunbatz really mostly comes online later in the game. So I don't think there's anything significant enough here to say he's gonna massively improve all of a sudden. ESET, same thing here. I don't think there's all too much change, though. Maybe early survivability improvements could help her a little bit. Yeah, maybe she's actually here, because that is obviously her main issue. And if you get her build going with an early tanky item, with early Vamp Shroud Warlock Staff combo or something, I know I'm preaching about a lot, but then use the heal from her ultimate. I think she could be quite hard to take down, so that might be nice. Izanami, not really anything that changes for her specifically. Janos, well, I would say he has got some more access to CDR, I suppose, but at the same time, he also doesn't have access to CDR boots anymore, so that kind of evens out. Not really much to say. Jing Wei, there is some potential for crit being built earlier, which could be interesting for her, but again, it's too vague in terms of what hunter builds can or cannot do. So yeah, I don't think much will change. Yamaganda actually got some buffs, I think. Yeah, got some damage buffs, which could be interesting. I don't know how much of an impact they will really have. Also got a movement buff, okay. But I think there was more to that. I think it was something with the 2. Well, anyways, yeah, I think we might see him even with Vamp Shot more as well. So might see something there. But I wouldn't put him like higher than this. I don't think he goes up as crazy as these cards will. Kali, I have a really hard time. Like, part of me wants to put her higher. Part of me wants to say she's going to significantly change because she is getting a buff herself and she's also a basic attack focused guard. But I'm not sure enough if basic attack focused guards are going to go up that much to justify putting her higher. Like, it might happen, but it might also not. And she's also, like, other basic attack focused guards can get away with items like Stonecutting Sword early on as well. Whereas Kali really, really, really wants attack speed. And early attack speed is not necessarily in all ways always easier to come by, because in a way Ninja Tabe was really nice for that, getting some power and some attack speed. So you have other options to build in that direction, but I don't think they necessarily outweigh what that offered. So we have to see how that goes. Maybe she'll just get second item kin side, and I'm completely off here. But yeah, for now I'm not sold enough on her necessarily being super strong, especially because Hasten Katana is still, in my opinion, a very weak item stat-wise. They nerfed that a lot, so it wouldn't be built much, and she kind of relies on it a lot. So we'll find out. Maybe you're gonna see Crusher Kali or something. Capri, not really that much that changes for him. Basically all the supports. Now, King Arthur is interesting, because King Arthur I would place lower and I would place him higher at the same time because of Stone of Gaia. I mean, obviously I already got a bunch of nerfs lately, so he's kind of already down there. But Stone of Gaia is a lot more accessible early on. It works pretty well against King Arthur because you can sustain much better through the passive effect against him. But at the same time, it also works pretty well for King Arthur because he doesn't have a built-in sustain and he can just get Stone of Gaia for that. So between those two, I would say, he's doing better and he's also doing worse because of the same item. So we'll find out which one it is. For now, I'll just put him in the middle. Kukulkan, someone who always benefits from stacking, Book of Thoth especially. And I think that'll help him. I think that'll help him just be able to get that early without having to worry about boots and just getting mobility that way. So that'll be nice for him. Kumbhakarna, again, as all the supports, not really much that I could see significantly changing from directly. And I think the same thing is true for Kuzenbo as well. For Loki, I mean, it helps him a tiny bit that Mannequin is a little bit more accessible. But does that really significantly change him? I think it's still not the preferable item for him, especially because he's stopped from using basic attacks for a while during his combo. And it's still something that can be very annoying to use with his decoy, so I don't really think that changes much for him. And everything else is not really changed that he uses to a degree that would, make sense for him to be placed differently. So yeah. Medusa, same thing here as most of the other hunters. I don't think she clears like camps and stuff as well as Einar, for example, so I don't think she really changes in that regard. Obviously still very, very strong. Now, Mercury is a guard that I would imagine will see an uptick. I can't tell you how much of an uptick, because we'll have to see how exactly the meta plays out in that regard. But what's interesting is that he might get... I'm actually going to put him like at the front here. He might get really early access to crit, which could help if we're going back to crit builds for Mercury. He gets the movement speed directly now. So you can technically have more movement speed earlier in the game if you're building into a movement speed item like Stonecutting Sword, because you get that plus what you would have gotten from boots, while also getting the power from that. And yeah, I think that'll help him a little bit, but I don't know how much it'll ultimately be. But I do think there's definitely potential for him to go up, maybe even more than this. Merlin, yeah, would have been No, actually he uses new stuff of Modern really weirdly, so actually that doesn't really work. So yeah, no, nothing really that changes for him. Morgan Le Fay, I don't think anything changes for her either. Well, no, maybe something does. Maybe the fact that, yeah, you can build her more survival focus as well could be nice, because yeah, she's very reliant on the damaging abilities. I know that obviously for good reasons most people prefer like more cooldown focused builds, but I think that if there is going to be mage bruiser style builds, then she is a prime example of a god that could use that well, because she has such high base values in some regards as well. So yeah, I could see that happening. I could definitely see that happening. So we're gonna put her here. Mulan is getting a bunch of buffs, if I recall correctly. Yep. Small buffs as usual. Like Iris is very careful with the buffs to Mulan, so I don't quite know if it's really going to change anything for her. But yeah, I'm just going to put her up here, and we'll see once again, as many times before. We'll wait and see if it actually does something, because so far things haven't shifted that much for her, even though Iris says that she is performing better overall now, statistically. Naja, I don't think will change in any way, really. Neath, I don't think will change either. Nemesis has potential to go up with the build changes. Possibly. But I wouldn't look at her as enough of an AA god, but then Mannequin is also more accessible for now, and that helps, I think. If you can make it through the early with Mannequin now better, that will help her burst builds, and I think that is something to look at. So that could be interesting. Nike definitely goes up. I think Nike actually goes up significantly. I think the Mannequin change makes Nike an incredibly potent jungler. I've played a game a while ago with her in on PTS. We had a look at that, and yeah, I think her early clear is absolutely crazy now. Sunder got nerfed. Sunder was like the main concern that stood against that, basically. But Sunder got nerfed to basically the old cooldown, only they can use it twice now. But that effectively means that she will lose less shield in a single engage most of the time, unless somebody's really investing 220 seconds of cooldown into just removing your shield. Which, if you achieve that, congratulations. Like at that point, you know, it's not a loss. You've made them invest everything for like the next almost 4 minutes into your one ultimate, which is going to be up again much sooner. So I really don't think that Sunder is going to be a massive problem for Nike anymore at this point, and I think that helps her. So I think the Sunder change actually helps her now after it got nerfed, and the Mannequin change helps her a lot as well as a jungler. So yeah, those two put together, big deal. Nox got a buff, but the buff, in my opinion, is so small. It's just a minion damage buff that it doesn't even matter, in my opinion. I don't think at all. It's like a little bit more scaling, a little bit more damage. I think she's still going to be in the same awkward spot as she was before. Nua, I mean, maybe here. Nua is someone who can work pretty nicely with stacking items. I think that's something that she can do. Yeah. No, I think that's just about viable. Again, same safety items that I talked about with others. Odin is getting buffs. 1 and 2 its cooldown, as well as the scaling of the 3. Odin used to be very oppressive at some point with these very stats that he's getting again now. If that's really going to be the case, I don't know. But it might be. And I just have to see how it shapes on the meta. I could imagine him also going a little bit more into jungle, just going for a really early aggression build. Olaran is getting a buff, or multiple buffs actually, scaling of the 2 and the cooldown of the 4, which I think are pretty significant. And then also gets the benefit of the rings being built early, which again, he's not the biggest user of them, not a Freya level user of them, but still almost certainly a decent user of them. So I think that'll help him altogether. So I think he'll do quite a fair bit better after not doing that well for a while. Osiris is someone who could actually, like, I'm kind of putting him here because I could actually see him doing a thing in multiple roles. I can see him doing a thing in jungle with Mannequin, absolutely. And I could see him doing a thing in solo with the upgrade, like with a buff to Death Toll by getting more healing from the cleaves, or with Bluestone, because the Bluestone upgrade that he technically uses better gets a significant buff, or overhaul really, so that he can consistently get more attack speed, and he has the short cooldowns to really easily proc that, easily stack that, because you can actually stack it on one target now, which, like, all of that helps him in many ways. Actually, and the attack speed items that I changed help him as well. You know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to put him into massive. I think Osiris has so many different changes that affect him in different roles, in different positive ways, that I think he's got to be good somewhere after this. Like, I'm not saying he's going to be SS tier necessarily, but I think either in jungle or in solo, he will be pretty good after this. We'll see if it's one or both. Yeah, that's what we're going to find out, but I think he's going to be a very, very interesting pick. Pele, not really much changed here that I would imagine to be important. No, not really. Persephone, also not really changes that would affect her that much. Poseidon could kind of make a case for survivability, but I don't think he would really want to build like Vamp Shroud on Poseidon. Maybe Rod. Hard to say, honestly. Possible that he might go up, but not to the same extent that I see it with most of the other mages, like Kumbhakarna, for example, that I put up here. So yeah, I'm going to be cautious with that one. Ragin, I don't think will change much. He got a nerf recently, but I don't think anything will change from besides that. Ra could change a little bit with Tainted Seal, but Scott doesn't work around his heal alone. And just spelling Tainted Seal for Ra I don't think will happen. So yeah, that's that. Ram could benefit from the fact that he has a built-in attack speed steroid, but that's on the off chance basically. So I don't know if that'll really do enough to warrant a different placement. Red Tusker, I don't think he'll change much. I know that technically his change with the Acon is a buff, but it also means that the Acon in itself has less stats, which makes it worse compared to other items at the same time while also being a buff, which is really confusing. It's just, you no longer have to look at it as a replacement for boots. It's just its own item, so it competes with other full items rather than competing with boots. And other full items tend to have similarly interesting stats, and then you're really mainly building it for the passive. So yeah, that changes things. So I think overall Red Tusker will basically end up around the same place as now. Raven, I think, is interesting because, like, one factor about Raven is that he has really good early jungle clear, and he also uses certain basic attack items decently well. And there are so many camps now, which I could see being a benefit for him. This is just on a hunch, really, because Raven hasn't really been doing much lately, and I think we could see some more Raven now that there are so many quick clearer bulk camps for him specifically, especially like the triple harpies that you just one-shot all of them now, because they're all small harpies, so that's pretty interesting. Scylla doesn't really change in my opinion. Serket could potentially change, but no, not really. Never mind. Set, I don't think changes massively. Don't I think if you could build Mannequin on Set, I guess technically you could. I was kind of thinking, by the way, Gohan Yu has a cleave as well now. Maybe he could also jungle now with that, but he always has 3 at the same time, so maybe not that much. Yeah, no, I don't think enough changes for Set to really change his placement. Skadi, we could look her in the same way as Anher, but Skadi is still much more of a high-risk pick. If she goes around alone and tries to clear as many things as Anher, then I don't see that being as safe for her. So, yeah, it's nice for her that she can clear some of those buff camps alone, but I don't know if it's enough to place her higher. Not sure. Possibly could have gone. Sobek, again, not really seeing anything that would particularly affect him. Stone of Binding could be very nice. At the same time, Winged Blade getting Winged Blade earlier could work so against his ultimate especially. Not getting counted out as hard as Aries though, so maybe... Thinking if I would put him a little bit higher, but then I'd also have to reconsider that for like Archie and Cerberus. It's really hard to say with the supports. It just depends on the value of Stone of Binding at the end of the day. I don't think War Flag is going to be good enough to justify picking it up, by the way, so it's going to be too hard to proc on everyone except maybe Sylvanus and Umoja. Sol benefits from the ring buff, but also not insanely, and doesn't get any other buffs at the same time. It's already doing pretty well anyways. Wukong, I don't see why he would change much. Could possibly happen, maybe because he could get a Soul Eater very, very early now. That could be interesting. So like a really aggressive solo build with that. Actually, yeah, I like that idea. But yeah, maybe we'll see like a Bluestone Soul Eater San Wukong that doesn't need boots anymore, and then just goes into tanky items after that. They have pretty good bully potential. But keep in mind that there's also more reason for junglers to gank solo now, so that might offset that, or might throw off that idea very quickly. Susano is technically getting a buff, but the buff is just a after death effect that allows him to proc his ultimate after death. Same as Terra, by the way, which I don't think will do that much. I don't think it'll change that much. Like, it's such a small buff that scenarios where it actually makes a difference are very, very minor. We have Sylvanus. He is an interesting user of War Flag, I will say that. But outside of that, I'm sure you will see him next patch because of the... Same with Scylla. You'll see them because of the Stranger Things Battle Pass, but I don't really think there are any changes that affect them all that much. You could get an early Lotus Crown on him though, that's interesting, but yeah. Terra, same thing. Not really seeing too many changes there. Bit boring for supports, I'm sorry. Thanatos. Thanatos. Cleave on Mannequin and a great user of Mannequin Hidden Blade. I think that's a big one. Like, I mean, like Thanatos needed more sustain in jungle, you know? He's gonna be almost always full health. Like, the fact that his abilities take away health from him is gonna be completely irrelevant because he's just constantly gonna heal himself in various ways. So that is definitely something worth keeping in mind. So I think he's gonna go up quite a fair bit. I'm actually gonna put him like here-ish. I think he's actually gonna be pretty good. Morrigan, maybe one day I'll see Mannequin Morrigan jungle, but some of that changes could help her. But it really depends on how she's gonna be built next patch, because after all, most of the time you're still looking to rather have more burst over survivability on the Morrigan. Thor is getting a buff. It's a small buff. It's a 10% scaling on the old, I think. And the range of the passive has increased a fair bit, which I think is more significant, because that's actually going to give him some damage boosts here and there. So I think it's nice, but I think it's also more of a minor increase in performance. Thoth is getting a buff that I would argue is probably actually fairly significant. It's the scaling of the 1 on each shot is, I think, increased by 5%. But along with that, I think like stacking items, the Book of Thoth, for a good reason, obviously, always worked pretty well on him. I could see a lot of potential for him to go up. Maybe more like here. Yeah, maybe like here in the same area as these guys, like here. But there's definitely room for him to perform better with the buffs and with the item changes that kind of benefit him, I would say. Tiamat is getting nerfs. I would say she's still only going to be here. The nerf in itself is pretty significant because it reduces the duration of the bowl down to half, so it can't chase you across the whole map. Not across the whole map, it can't chase you the whole time. The serpents can no longer split push phoenixes. But on the other hand, I think the item changes are in her favor. I think Vamp Shroud is going to be a really interesting item for her now. I think Vamp Shroud as into a Blood-Soaked Shroud could provide her with a lot of sustain now while in fights and just using her ultimate and stuff. So yeah, I'm a bit scared of that part. So I'm going to put it in a minor minus because I think the nerfs will affect her, but those item changes could also affect her in the other direction. We could see a very different Tiamat with more tankiness, but coming out of middle lane with still having a lot of power at the same time, which I think sounds scary. I'm not looking forward to that. We'll find out. Tsukuyomi, not really anything that changes for him specifically. Tier, not really either. Like solo doesn't change that much and support doesn't change that much overall, I think. Ullr, I think Ullr is in the same boat as Anhur, where his early aggression could help him get a significant farm advantage. And yeah, we could also, again, we could see something like Transcendence Davos Ullr, I could imagine. Transcendence Soul Eater also. Kind of similar to Cupid, like where double stacking could now be justified and could make sense for the more ability-focused builds, and then you get your attack speed after that or something. We'll find out, but I could imagine it for Ullr specifically, at least. Varman doesn't get any direct changes, but I think will benefit on one hand from the Bluestone change, which means that he can build ability-based early and basic attack-focused late game, though he has not the easiest time getting full stacks on it, but still, you're going to get some stacks. Even if you get 3 stacks, you get a fair bit of extra attack speed. And on the other hand, he benefits from the buffed attack speed items for solo, Berserker's Shield, and Shogun's Kosari. So I think those changes actually help him a fair bit. I'm actually going to put him a little bit higher than this as well. I'm going to put him like here. So he doesn't get any direct changes, direct buffs, but those things combined, I think, make a bit of a difference for him. Even though obviously he still gets shut down by Cursed Ankh in late game. So we'll have to see where that leads to him ending up overall. But I don't think he'll be like the dominant force in solo compared to like Osiris, for example. Or even like stronger gods, like gods that are strong with Bluestone. But I think he'll have an easier time getting to the stage where he can be useful in different ways, and then potentially work from there if you get to level 20, if you get your starter upgrade. Vulcan, not getting any changes. Not seeing anything that would directly affect him all too much. Could go Vamprod, I guess, but yeah. Shivalanke, not really anything that changes for him significantly. Xingtian, nope, nothing that changes there. Kimoja could be interesting with Warflag, but actually gets a bunch of nerfs. They put the delay on the 1 as well. It's really hard to say. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put her into significant minus. But this is confusing because, like, depending on where you look, she's already at a low performance. It's just she is already only good in the hands of really good players. So that makes it really odd, right? Like her Omi scales differently now, and her 1 is slower, and that I think that makes a fair bit of a difference for high level play. I don't know. No, maybe I'll just leave her here. I think it's just gonna be like that, but it's gonna be really hard. Like we'll have to see what the people who are actually really good at Yemoja, like the pro players that play her really well, say about her, and if they pick her, and then judge it more based on that. I think Ymir, same as all the other supports, and Zeus, yeah, could benefit from like Warlock's Vamprod. Still gonna be in a rough spot, I think, but it could help him a little bit. But we're finishing off with a nice one. Finish off with Zhonghui. Well, we put him right next to Hades. I think Zhonghui will benefit a lot from the Vamprod changes. He benefits a lot from Warlock Staff being an early choice because he already likes Warlock Staff a lot. He's one of the gods. You try and get it on if you can, but usually you can't at the moment. I think that will be more possible. So I think that his performance will increase quite significantly. So we're at the end of the list. This is what it looks like. Again, this is not a tier list with an A, B, C, S, whatever tier. It's a tier list that talks about how much gods will improve compared to the position they are now. So if a god in this tier, in neutral tier, is in S tier right now, then I think they will still be S tier. If they're in B tier right now, then I think they will still be B tier. Whereas the gods that I think will go down are here. And things that I think will go up are here. So what you notice is that there aren't many gods that I put in an area where I think they go down. That is mainly because there aren't many changes that would affect specific gods in a negative way. We have a minor SNES nerf, which is still going to be very good. We have a very minor Winged Blade nerf, which really won't matter much. And we have very few god nerfs, which I'll listed here. And then I put some of the very heal-focused gods there, that the ones that can be played in solo. And that's about it. Because there isn't really much of a reason to assume that specific gods will go down yet. But of course, more of these gods are going to go down from their current point based on what item meta we get towards. For example, if we get a very basic attack focused meta in solo lane, then we will most certainly see many of the gods in solo lane that are currently like the strongest go down in favor of the more basic attack focused one, which I'm expecting to perform better. But in an ideal world, obviously, we'd have both. We'd have basic attack focused gods in solo performing well and ability based ones. Let's see if that actually happens. It's unlikely. Usually one thing sticks out more towards the end, but still, the possibility is there. And we'll just have to find out where it goes from here, and then it'll be clearer which gods will actually go down. So this is just speculation based on what I think the meta will be, how the meta will develop, with relatively high clear focus and aggression for the new camps that they have, both in duo and in solo, as well as a heavy emphasis on mannequin, on cleave gods in the jungle, as well as certain benefits for basic attack focus gods that no longer need to build boots first, that can build like the whole katana tree if they want to, as well as more survivability options for mages, both in middle as well as guardians in solo as well. Maybe, now that I think of it, maybe we actually put Audio up a bit, because we're gonna put Audio and Sobek up a bit. Maybe Kuzumbo, because they could actually, I'm looking if I'm missing any guardians that are played in solo. I mean, Aries technically played as a solo sometimes, but odds are relatively low. Maybe put Xingtian up as well. So these guys could technically do better because of Vamshot in solo as well. I think there's potential for Vamshot in solo to bring some guardians back into solo. Potential. Not saying it's going to happen. Potential. If I'm missing one of the other ones, I'm sorry. I might have just, I just have like quick glance here because I just realized that. Should put these up a little bit. Terra should really benefit from that. No, I think it's too risky. Possibly as well. But yeah. So yeah, those are the main ideas behind this, why I think some of these cards might go up. Rings as well, the rings for basic attacking guards, obviously have those a lot. And then there's some more niche cards, like for example Bastet, who just benefits a lot from a very early Transcendence and not needing boots in that regard. Similar things. So I think that should clear it up. I think that's a decent result. I'm happy with how this list looks. I kind of wanted to put something here, but yeah, I'm really not sure. If it's one of them, it's one of these two really, but that depends a lot on how the other items affect and the other item changes. And I don't want to make any snap judgments there, because after all, Tiamat and Demoja are still gods that can end up being very, very strong in any upcoming meta because of their base kits, essentially. Yeah, so that is it. With that, thank you guys very much for watching. If you're new to the channel and you want to see more about the upcoming season, we'll have plenty in the next days. The next going to be the patch summary tomorrow. I hope to see you for the next one soon. And if you're new to the channel, please sub button and ring the bell. And I will click it too. Yeah, right. I will think of a new outro soon. ZiSotto out.